he now talks about who he's going to vote for. Spoiler alert, not Biden. Watch this.
But then there's
I voted
this.
for Obama. I stood in line for 6 hours to shake Obama's hand. Okay.
So let me just ask on a personal level. I can see it in your face. This hurt you personally.
And it hurt the company too. And it was an insult to, Tesla has 140,000 employees. Okay, of the half of them are in the United States. Tesla has created more manufacturing jobs than everyone else combined.
So let me ask this then. You've devoted at least the last close to 20 years of your life, if not more, to the climate change, trying to get Tesla off the ground, in part to improve climate. You talked about that.
Yeah, a real right-wing motive.
Repeatedly.
God, far right, if anything.
I understand that. And then it's
right. Reverse psychology next level.
Well, no, but so here's then the question, which is how do you square the support that you have given? I believe you were at a fundraiser for Vivek Ramaswamy, for example, who says that the climate issue is a hoax, right?
Yeah, I disagree with him on that.
But I would think that would be such a singular issue for you. I would think that the climate issue would be such a singular issue for you that actually it would disqualify almost anybody who didn't take that issue seriously.
Well, I haven't endorsed anyone for president. I mean, I wanted to hear what Vivek had to say because I think some of his things some of the things he says I think are pretty solid. He's concerned about government overreach, about government control of information. The degree to which old Twitter was basically a sock puppet of the government was ridiculous. It seems to me that there's a very severe violation of the First Amendment in terms of how much control the government had over old Twitter, and it no longer does. So there's a reason for the First Amendment. The reason for the First Amendment for freedom of speech is because the people that immigrated to this country came from places where there was not freedom of speech, and they were like, you know what, we got to make sure that that's constitutional, because where they came from, if they said something, they'd be put in prison, or there'd be, something bad would happen to them. So, and freedom of speech, you have to say, when is it relevant? It's only relevant when someone you don't like can say something you don't like, or it has no meaning. And as soon as you sort of, throw in the towel and concede to censorship, it is only a matter of time before someone censors you. And that is why we have the First Amendment.
Could you see yourself voting for President Biden? If it's a Biden-Trump election, for example?
I think I would not vote for Biden.
You'd vote for Trump?
I'm not saying I'd vote for Trump, but I mean, this is definitely a difficult choice here.
Would you vote for Nikki Haley? Nikki Haley, by the way, wants all social media names to be exposed, as you know.
No, I think that's outrageous. Yeah, no, I'm not going to vote for some pro-censorship candidate.
Okay. What's interesting about that is that, he's being pressed on, well, wouldn't you vote for somebody who really cares about the environment? Because that's clearly a big issue for you. So it seems like it'd be something that, it'd be a deal breaker. Like you couldn't vote for somebody who says things like, oh, it's a hoax. But Elon made it very clear that he himself, without being a politician, without being an elected official, has done more for the environment than anybody on Earth, really. And so then that kind of proves that it's not really a government thing. Businesses are now seeing the reason why Elon has done more for, there's several reasons, but if you think of just the big one of the electric vehicles, the fact that he was able to really hone in on this technology to the point where he made it cool, he made it fast. Before Tesla, electric vehicles were slow and they were frumpy and nobody wanted one. But then when Tesla came out, and it rides like a rocket. If you've ever ridden in a Tesla, it's like a rocket. You really feel like you're taking off, like you're going to fly off into space. And so you've got this super fast car, super cool looking. People suddenly want electric vehicles. Suddenly, that's what everybody's aiming for. And then other car manufacturers are saying, well, then we got to also get on board. We've got to do this as well. You've got companies going and using Tesla tech in order to develop the electric cars. So you've got this entire industry that it's not just Tesla and the brand, but it's an entire industry that was created and motivated and inspired by Elon's Tesla. That is how it's done, right? One innovative person does something really great, and it creates this sort of ripple effect. And politicians really have nothing to do with it. In fact, politicians have left Tesla out of the conversation. When Joe Biden was elected, and he leaves Elon out because Elon's too right wing for him or something, and leaves him out and invites all these others American car manufacturers and leaves out the number one American car manufacturer for passenger vehicles. From the conversation, I mean, it's so why would he care what the politician thinks about the environment? Why would he care? Because they're not really doing anything for or against, or they're not really doing anything anyway. It's the industry that does stuff. Lastly, I want to leave you with this clip with Elon. He does talk about free speech and how he reconciles his desire and his sort of absolutism for free speech with his business in China. Watch this.
Let me one related thing on this, and the leverage of countries and things over you and regulators. X is this free speech platform. You do business in China, lots of business in China. That's an important part of your business, I imagine.
Well, not SpaceX.
How do you think about the leverage that the Chinese have over you? And do they have leverage over you? And how do you feel about, some people would say, is it hypocritical for you to be doing business in China, or frankly in other countries as it relates to X and other things that don't follow this free speech path that you have espoused?
The best that the X platform can do is adhere to the laws of any given country. Do you think there's something more we could do than that?
I think it would be very hard, but I just wonder, given the sort of strong philosophical approach that you've been vocal about, whether you say to yourself, maybe I shouldn't be doing business in that country.
Well, first of all, Starlink and SpaceX are no business in China whatsoever. Tesla has one of four vehicle factories in China. And China is, a quarter of our market or something like that. So it's a quarter of the market of one company. The same is true, by the way, of all the other car companies. They also have something on that order of a quarter of their sales in China. So if that's a problem for Tesla, it's a problem for every car company. I think one has to be careful about not conflating the various companies, because I can only do things that are within the bounds of the law. I cannot do beyond that. My aspiration is to do as much good as possible and to be as productive as possible within the bounds of what is legal.
Right. A lot of people criticize Elon Musk for doing business in China. A lot of people criticize many other companies for doing business in China, thinking that they have a moral issue with the country, with the way the country runs itself, or what they perceive as certain abuses against certain groups of people, or whatever it might be, that gives them their reasoning for disliking and not wanting businesses to be there. But, ultimately, countries turn around and they become more humane and they become better and they give more freedoms to their people, typically when they're thriving. When countries are not thriving, when the people are suffering, when the people are poor, when there's violence because of it, because when people are poor, there tends to be more crime and more violence. And when that happens in a country, countries tend to become more authoritarian, and they actually tend to crack down a lot more on the people. So the best thing you can do if you want to liberate people is to allow their countries to flourish, allow them to become wealthy, allow them to have access, because that will ultimately liberate the people. It just happens over time. That's what happens when they're not dealing with wars and crises and sanctions. And you look at Saudi Arabia. I mean, if any company was going to say they're not going to do business with another country, Saudi Arabia should be high up on that list, considering it's still ruled by a monarchy, which are extremely antiquated forms of government. They still have separation of women and men. Women and men go to different sides of Starbucks cafes. They can't mix together. Women couldn't drive just up until very recently. It's a much more conservative culture, but that's their culture for them to deal with, and the people will rise up when they see fit if they feel like they need to rise up. But they haven't needed to, because as the country has become wealthier and more businesses have opened up to Saudi Arabia, and people in Saudi Arabia are able to see more of the outside world and see what's going on, and then they come back to Saudi Arabia and they say, wait a minute, I kind of like it over there. Their leaders have had no choice but to change. That's why now women can drive. That's why now they're allowing movies. People could go to movies in Saudi Arabia for the first time over the last couple of years. So they've allowed more, they've liberalized more as people are doing better. People are wanting more. The country's doing well. That's how change is made. And that's how you make change in China. Elon Musk is not a Chinese national. I always find this so odd when people want, like they call for us to condemn China or to condemn Hamas or condemn Iran or condemn, all these various different countries, Russia, everywhere. And I'm thinking, okay, so you could scream and condemn all you want from where you're sitting, but why do they need to listen to you? They need to listen to their own citizens. Those countries listen to their own citizens. And that's the only people who have power, is the people who are actually in their countries. If they have a fear of being toppled or people rising up and ousting them, which happens a lot throughout history. If you read history books, happens all the time. So they have a genuine fear of that. And if they have a fear of that, then they'll change their behavior, the way they govern their countries. Those are the people who have power. Elon Musk is an American citizen. So the power he has is in the United States. If he says, look, I want free speech as an American, then he can say that. If he says, I want free speech, and he says that to China, they say, well, then go back to America, where you come from. Why? You're not Chinese. You're not a Chinese citizen. Why don't you leave us alone? Let the Chinese people decide. So for me as an American, I say, well, all I can do is control, at least I like to think I have some, I know I don't have any control at all, but I like to hope and think that my vote counts. I like to hope and think that my voice matters as an American, that there's pressure that could be put on politicians and that we can make some change here. That's why we talk. That's why we tweet. That's why we protest. That's why we do any of these things, because we hope that somebody in our government hears us and actually says, oh, shoot, I might lose an election if I don't do what my constituents want. Or, oh, gee, the people they really think this is an unpopular idea. Maybe it's not the best thing in the world to do. Like, remember the little ministry of misinformation that they tried to do? That ended up being unpopular. And guess what happened? It went away. Nobody wanted it. They heard that and it went away. So there is some power with the people when we speak up, but you have to be a citizen of that country. So all I can do is pressure the United States government. But the United States government has a lot of power and influence around the world. So us pressuring the United States government helps with foreigners and foreign countries as well. I mean, all the wars we wage. So we can say as an American, hey, we don't want you supporting endless wars. Stop with the war in Ukraine. Stop funding the Israelis in their assault on Gaza. Stop with the sanctions on Iran and Venezuela and all these other places that you're trying to collapse. Stop trying to poke the dragon in China. Stop it. We don't want to go to another war. We're not interested in this. So we can say these things. We can criticize what our government does. But what kind of power do I have over Russia? What kind of power do I have over Hamas? I don't have any power over those organizations or those countries or those governments. I only have power over the government that I have some power over, and whatever it is my government does. My government does a lot of crap around the world, so there's a lot to be said, when it comes to this government. So, what is Elon Musk going to say to China? He's not a Chinese national. Leave it to the Chinese people. He's just wanting to do some business there. The Chinese people like him doing business there, just like they like many other American companies doing business there. They like to have products. They like to buy things just like anybody else. They love to go shopping and buy, consume the way Americans are consuming too. So, let the people live the way the people want to live, and then try to make change in your own country. And then maybe other people will see your country, and if they think it's great, they'll want to mimic it. They'll want to mirror your country. But if they don't think it's great, they're not going to want to. And I can tell you right now, a lot of people around the world are not looking at the United States thinking, yeah, that's great. That's great. I want to mimic that. I want to mirror that. I want to match that. No, they're not. They're not thinking that. And that's a problem. We should be the shiny beacon on the hill that people are wanting to They're wanting to mimic. They're wanting to be like America, and that sentiment is slipping from the people in the world. It's just that shiny, us being the shiny heroic country is slipping, and that is something we got to get in control, and we got to get these people who are in power in our government and hold them accountable for ruining our reputation, because that is really it's all we got left. It seems like at this point.